The Dialed In Angling podcast presented by OnX Fish, Fish USA, Ski-Doo, Runnings, Minnesota DNR, Strike Master, 13 Fishing, L&M Fleet Supply, and DeWalt. Well, welcome back to this week's podcast. You know, just like each and every week, we've got a ton of great fishing reports pouring in from Lake of the Woods, Devil's Lake, Lake Winnebagosh, Brainerd Lakes area, Mille Lacs, Leech Lake, you name it. We've got them on the map, even Ottertail. I've had Randon Olson's chimed in once again this week. We'll get to the fishing reports in a minute, but I want to introduce my guest, and that's Remington Moren of Elite Angling Adventures. Remington resides in the Walker area. He's no stranger to the podcast, and of course, no stranger to the Dialed In Angling TV show. He's a friend of mine, a guide, and a heck of an angler. Remington, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, man, I want to just give a little teaser and a preview before I get into fishing reports, before I get sidetracked with all the fishing that I've done. You know, I'm easily excitable, just like you, where I get excited. I've been on Mille Lacs this week. We've been up at Lake of the Woods. I've been a bunch of places. I went pan fishing again this week. So I've been like ice fishing overdrive. But before I get into those details, and before we get into the fishing report, let's talk a little bit about what we did up at Lake of the Woods, because I'm super pumped about this next episode that's going to drop this weekend. Of course, it's going to hit YouTube on Monday. But it's cool. It's different. It's completely different than what I've ever seen, from other content, from social media creators, anglers out there. It's something that I've wanted to do for a while. And let's just get right into it, man. Remington and I went up to Lake of the Woods, and we met up with our buddy, Matt Peters, who's been up there fishing for basically the last 2 weeks. And we sharp shot some walleyes. Basically, what we did is we took forward-facing sonar and we used it in the same manner that we would in the summer when we're casting to walleyes. Only this time we were drilling holes and dropping torpedo spoons right on top of them.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was kind of nerve-wracking, honestly, because when we were driving up there, I think we both kind of had envisioned of what we wanted to do. And then to actually get on that first one and see it work, see it come together, it was like, okay, this is going to work and this is going to be awesome. You know, I think we both have kind of done it up on Lake Winnipeg, but we've never got to do it down here. And I feel like that's kind of where it was born on the ice, is up on Lake Winnipeg. But like you said, no, it's never really been documented. And then to be able to do it, have it come together, it was super cool to be a part of.
Well, so it was sort of a light bulb moment for me. Like when you and I were filming the crappie episode for episode 2, season 3, if you haven't checked it out, it's Crappie Crush. Remington and I went out, what was only a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. Seems like super early ice. It was right after the St. Paul Ice Show. But we went out, we filmed that crappie episode, and then you and I started talking about like sharpshooting walleyes. And when I was up at Lake Winnipeg, that's exactly what I did. I was actually sharpshooting walleyes after that we had shot the Dialed In Angling episode. We wanted to sharpshoot up there for the episode, but it was 25 below when I was up there with my buddy Bill Dietz last year. And so we ended up just kind of hunkering in the otters and moving them to locations where we'd see big numbers of fish. But it wasn't until after the shoot when I went out, we needed some picture fish because it was so cold on that shoot. We weren't able to get fish for pictures. And so I went out on my own. I kind of followed Donovan guys out with my truck, and I was just kind of on my own drilling. And I would see fish, and I would drill on top of them, drop a rip and wrap down, and catch them. And sharpshooting them on your own isn't the easiest thing in the world. And so, I had this vision in my mind of doing a sharpshooting episode like on Lake of the Woods or other locations, really. And all of a sudden, you and I started talking after that crappie shoot. And I think both of us sort of had a light bulb moment where like, yeah, let's do it up at Lake of the Woods.
Yeah, it was awesome. And like that had to be extremely difficult for you to be doing it by yourself. I mean, it's obviously doable, but in the boat, you're on the trolling motor looking at the screen, you can cast to them. Well, here you got to have a hole for your forward facing, and then you got to have someone drilling, and then you got to have someone right next to the drilling guy with a flasher and the rod, you know. So that had to be extremely tough all by yourself up on Winnipeg.
Yeah. So what I did is I just put the screen towards me. Okay. So I could see the screen and I would point at the fish. And if they were within 50 feet, I would drill on top of them and I would carry my Markham and my rip and wrap rod just kind of in the Markham holder. And I would drill the hole and then I would drop down instantly and try to catch those fish. If I noticed the fish was veering off one way or the other or back and forth, depending on distance, I would just re-drill the hole. Essentially, what we did up at Lake of the Woods, it's just the fish weren't moving as much. And, that's the challenging part of sharpshooting. And what you'll see in this dialed in angling episode is the fact that we're sharpshooting fish, but we're working as a team. And I was able to do it and get on top of fish and have extreme success. But I think part of it up there on Lake Winnipeg, the fish weren't moving as much and they were super bitey. So if I got it in their range, they were like right on top of it. Where Lake of the Woods, they were bitey, but we had to land it right in front of their face. If we hit them in the tail or if they had already gone past our bait, we had to re-drill. And it's nerve-wracking, but it's also fun at the same time because it's like hunting fish, right? And timing that and timing is key. And I don't want to spoil out the entire episode, but I do want to break down sharpshooting in general. And I will say that it helps to have someone that is really good at forward-facing sonar, or a couple of guys that are, or anglers that are really good at forward-facing sonar. An extremely sharp drill, like drilling with that Maven. Doing it early ice is obviously going to be the time frame in which is the best because there's not as much ice to get through. And what I mean by early ice is like once you start getting past like 2 feet of ice, I think it's going to be hard to sharpshoot, right? Unless the fish aren't moving that fast. And then having a heavy bait to get in front of those fish quickly, like a jigging wrap, or, the ideal bait for us during that shoot was the torpedo spoon, just because it falls so fast and it's tungsten and you can see it. And it's super fun, man. It kind of gives me that feel of summer in the sense where all summer long, yourself, myself, everybody that's really good with forward-facing sonar units are sharpshooting all summer. I love sharpshooting in the back of the boat when I'm guiding, let my customers either be up front or on the back pole on their own unit. Yes, I'm pointing out fish to them, but once they're engaged on their own fish, I'm always trying different techniques, whether it's, fishing different plastics. It could be freeloaders. It could be, mayors. It could be snap jigging plastics on the bottom for fish. It doesn't always have to be swimming baits, swimming a crawler or anything like that. I just like trying different presentations, whether it's deploying a jigging wrap or whatever. This kind of gives me that same feel when we're out on the ice.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree 100%.
It's more engaging, and it's just one of those things that makes ice fishing really, really fun. Sharpshooting on the ice is here to stay. I mean, once we broadcast this episode this weekend and people can see how we go about doing it as a team and the tools that we use, you're going to see more and more people sharpshooting.
Yeah, there's going to be people running all over on Lake of the Woods with a sonar sled and tungsten torpedo spoons. That's for sure.
Yeah, I didn't mention the sonar sled. That Otter sonar sled is so huge for being able to drag around a forward-facing sonar unit. In the past, just lugging that thing around or putting it in a sports sled was fine, but that sonar sled is legit.
Yeah, I mean, like we talked about when we were up there, when you're sharpshooting, it all comes down to efficiency. And when you can have everything organized and, everybody kind of knows their job and knows where everything goes on the sled, you're not, oh, hang on, let me try and grab my rod out of here or stuff like that. That thing is, for something so simple, it really made a big part in our success.
It did. And you hit the nail on the head when you say efficiency, because as we did that sharpshooting episode and as I was driving home, I was just thinking of ways how we could be more efficient. And efficiency working as a team is key. Having that Maven auger, having the right spoon, having the right setup, knowing that when you dump on those fish, they're aggressive and they're biting. I don't think Lake of the Woods is the only place you can do this. I feel like you can do this in a lot of locations, in a lot of different basins, whether you're in South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin. You know, I'm envisioning getting over to Green Bay, getting all the way out to Fort Peck, getting out to Devil's Lake, Waubay, all of these areas that I can do a little sharpshooting. But efficiency is going to be key, and you really, you really have to pick and choose the people you're going to bring to do it. And maybe if you're new to this, or if somebody watches this and they want to get good at sharpshooting, just know that you've got to have a little bit of patience, right? You got to have a little bit of patience with the person that's running the forward-facing sonar, and maybe a little bit of patience with the people drilling, and collectively as a group when you're doing it, patience all together, because you're going to miss a lot of fish. It's just the nature of fish that are swimming in the water column. Some are high in the water column, some are moving fast, some are moving slow. I would say the number one thing for anglers, and Rem, maybe you'll agree with me, is that when you start sharpshooting, make sure if you're seeing fish that are out past 50 feet, that you cut the distance on those fish.
Yeah.
If they're out at 100 feet, cut the distance, because then you can really tell which way those fish are swimming. What do you think?
I agree 100%. And we did that so much, even 40 feet, we would go to 30 feet and cut another hole just to, really you can, like you said, you can tell which way that fish is facing, so instead of just a dot out there at 60 feet, it might be looking past you. So you maybe have to drill at that 63, which it sounds like we're getting really, really particular, but it's what you have to do, and yes, we could have sat on a hole and, because right now there's just a pile of fish in Lake of the Woods, and we could have sat there and, caught them one after another, but it was super fun, super, just involved, instead of just sitting in the otters and picking away at them. It was something I'd never got to do in Minnesota. Like we said, we did it on Winnipeg, and, it's more of, I don't know how to say it. Gosh, I'm drawing a blank. Super rewarding when you do get that right, that right hole drilled and you get on those fish. And so, yeah, like you said, you really have to cut the distance, because if they're facing left, maybe cheat your hole, 18 inches to the left, to make sure that bait is getting in front of them, where in the summertime you just reel up and make another cast if they don't see it. Well, now you got to cut a hole. So you're like, come back down to efficiency. If you can cut that distance and really be able to see which way those fish are facing and everything like that, you're going to have a lot more success.
Yeah, I think of it like in the summer, like open water. I have no problem casting at fish at 70, 60, 70, whatever comfortable casting distance is, right? You start getting out past 70. Sometimes it's more challenging to cast to those fish. So I'll cut the distance a little bit in my boat. I know definitely when I first started using forward-facing sonar, I would like to get on top of those fish as best as I can without spooking them, right? And so we saw that on ice. We wanted to cut the distance without bumping that fish, especially if they were high in the water column. So let's say the fish were out at 70, 80 feet, 75 feet, and we wanted to cut the distance. We would cut the distance down to 30 or 40, because we don't know which way that fish is swimming, but we're also not walking over the top of those fish, not pulling that sonar sled over the top of the fish in which to spook them. And so when we did that, you really get dialed in as far as which direction the fish is going, the rate of speed in which they're traveling, and really kind of how to time all of that out. Because let's say that they're swimming away from you, right? That we cut the distance at 35, we look out and the fish are at 25 to 30. We can tell if they're swimming away from us, all of a sudden they're at 35, 40. When we cut our hole, we can anticipate where that fish is going to be. Same with side to side. If we see that they're swimming side to side, left or right, if they're out at 30, now they're 45, we can get in front of them, especially those fish that were really high in the water column. And it was much easier, instead of dumping right on top of their head, to anticipate the direction they were going and then drop your bait. And then that fish would come into the cone right at the precise time to get bit. And I will say almost every fish we got in front of, bit.
They bit.
Unless it was a sturgeon, right? We chased a
Right.
few sturgeon around a couple times, but that's just part of the learning curve. A couple of those sturgeon that were face onto us looked like a really big walleye, and then all of a sudden they turned and we saw the big manatee looking, silhouette of that thing. But most of the walleyes we saw, especially the ones that were high in the water column, bit.
Yeah. Yeah, it was when I got home, I told my wife, she's like, "Well, how was that?" I'm like, "That was the most fun walleye fishing I've had in a long time on the ice."
Yeah, I did too. I told everybody. I mean, driving back from Lake of the Woods, I was like, we shot a killer episode and something that was super fun, way out of the normal of just sitting in one spot, waiting for the fish to come to you. We were hunting them down. I sort of equated out to the difference between deer hunting and sitting in a stand versus pheasant hunting, where you're hunting these things down and you're running everywhere and you're chasing fish. That forward-facing sonar and using it just like we do in the boat. I can't wait to do it again. We shot it last year on Red Lake. If you look at the Red Lake crappies episode, that's exactly what Nick and Jake and I were doing on Red Lake, was hunting down schools of fish on Red Lake, and it was super fun. After we shot that episode, I brought my son up there. I brought a number of people that were like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's hunting fish." Well, we did that in a sense strictly for walleyes on Lake of the Woods. And like I said, I'm going to be doing it a lot more in different destinations. If I get the right people like you, Nick, Mitch, and it's the right scenario, I'm going to be doing it a lot more. Where I can say that it doesn't work is when the fish are spooky, and you really have to tell the mood of the fish. I just know from being on early ice on Mille Lacs right now. After shooting that episode, I was super pumped to get out to Mille Lacs and sort of sharpshoot some fish, especially if they were off the edges of mud flats and gravel bars. Let me tell you, with the last rain we had and this warm up, it's really knocked that snow, and it was a minimal amount of snow on Mille Lacs down anyway. Those fish were spooky. You did have to set up and wait for those fish to come back. It was almost more like deer hunting, where you would see them on forward-facing sonar everywhere. But even if you started cutting a grid or marking out a break line with the snowmobile, you would blow all of those fish off the edges. And so you kind of had to just set up and wait. And that's, in itself, a little bit more challenging to do after you've shot an episode of sharpshooting.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, it's definitely a time and place type of deal. Like you said, I think it will work most places, but you're going to have days where it's just not going to work, and we were fortunate enough to be up there on a day that it worked.
It did. And so, like, if I'm just telling listeners or anglers, if they're tuning in, if you pull up to a spot after you've watched this episode, and I highly encourage you to watch this episode of Dialed In Angling, it is really cool kind of how we go about hunting down these fish, and it's different. And it may be a new concept where people are going to have a lot of questions. Maybe they have to watch it a couple times to get the full brunt of what we're doing. But essentially, sharpshooting is just like we're doing in the summer, where we're making a cast towards these fish, or we're drilling a hole on top of these fish and dumping a bait right in front of their face. Now, in the summer, we do the same thing. If we pull up to a spot and the fish are really spooky, we take the live scope off them, or we don't bump as close to them. You can't cut the distance. If the fish are fixated on the bottom versus up in the water column, we make a determination whether we're going to use bobbers or we're going to suspend a bait, or if we're going to fish on the bottom. If you throw a jig wrap out there and they instantly react to that bait or whatever presentation it is, that's how you're modifying your sharpshooting in the summer. It's no different in the winter. If you get out there and you see that these fish aren't moving that much, and you drill a hole over the top of them and you drop your 2D sonar down there and that fish is still sitting there, it's game on.
Yeah. Get like a kid in the candy store.
It is. It's super fun. I enjoy sharpshooting all the time now. I will attempt it at every ice fishing event that I do, or every filming shoot that I go on. If we're filming walleyes, I'm going to try to get on top of them. And especially if I see big ones, because that's the fun part, right? Is you can sharpshoot these bigger fish. Like like you said earlier in the podcast, we could have set up in one spot. We were on Lake of the Woods, and we could have shot a great episode just sitting there, sorting through the saugers, sorting through the small walleyes. Yes, you'd catch your occasional big fish, and it would have been a great episode. But it wouldn't have showcased what we did here to the audience, right? It would have just showcased Lake of the Woods is on fire, which it is. But this showcases something a little bit different, something you can do in ice fishing, and a lot of other people can do to have tremendous success. And it's something, like I said, I will be doing all the time now.
Yeah, for sure. And it's something kind of to talk about too, is like, it's not like people may watch the episode and be like, oh my gosh, they're just doing it because of forward facing sonar. They drop it down anywhere in the lake and they're catching fish. We cut a lot of holes before we caught fish or got in that prime area where you do have fish. Like you were saying a little bit ago, if you pull up to a spot and cut a hole, drop it down, and it's like, oh wow, there is a lot of big ones here, fish high up, perfect place to try it. But it's not, I just don't want people to watch the episode and be like, oh, well, it is cheating. No, you got to be really good at it. And you got to, like I said, we cut a pile of holes before we found that area. And we put on a lot of miles on the boots walking around trying to find that prime area.
I think when people watch this episode, they're going to get a sense of how many holes we cut and how you can get off a little bit, right? I mean, 5 feet off, sometimes that fish isn't going to engage. And right away if that fish is going to engage. Once that bait comes down there, if they see it, I mean, it's a vapor trail. And we recorded a lot of that stuff. So I think that's going to get relayed. And, people are going to just really gravitate towards some of those forward-facing sonar images of that thing coming down. And then they can get a sense of how many holes we cut. And then, of course, the sense of satisfaction you get when that fish actually does finally engage, because that's the fun part. That's the hunting part. And yes, it's not a gimme, man. If people look at that and say forward-facing sonar is cheating, you shouldn't be able to do that. No, it's not. It's extremely tough to do what we did. And it poses a challenge, but it's a challenge which makes ice fishing really, really fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's talk a little bit about bait presentations. I've said it and I spoiled it out, and I don't care, but that torpedo spoon's great because it's tungsten and you can really see it on forward facing sonar. But other baits that come to mind, Matt was fishing a jigging wrap or a jigging shad wrap. He was able to get those baits down there. A jigging wrap is kind of right along those same lines where you can dump that thing. And even though it spins a little bit more, it's still, if you're fishing a number 5, even I could think of like areas, whether it's Lake of the Woods or somewhere where these fish are out in the basin, even a number 7. I think we could have got away with a number 7, especially on bigger fish. We're dumping that number 7 jigging wrap down there. We could have caught them as well.
I agree. One thing we talked about on the way up that we didn't try is it would have been super cool to kind of interpret a summer bait, because I caught a bunch of fish up on Winnipeg last winter on the mooch minnow, and I think that would have worked crazy good. A quarter, or even, I mean, you could have went to a 1/2 ounce head, I think, and one of them mooch minnows, and I think that would have been really good too. But you just need something that falls fast and shows up really good.
Yeah, I love fishing plastics. I think Lake Winnipeg is one of those areas where you can really experiment with baits. And it's been a number of years ago, but I really liked fishing plastics up there. Like you said, the mooch minnow, the freeloader works great up there, even Mayer's. Now Lake Winnipeg, a lot of times you'll lighten up your jig heads a little bit because it's not as a deep a basin and you want that bait to float a little bit more. Those fish tend to like flutter spoons and floating baits.
I was just going to say, I mean, half the time, I don't know about you, but like you're under 15 feet of water, so I think that's a perfect time to downsize, or like you said, flutter spoons. I know them. They love that roach spoon up there, the rattling roach spoon or whatever. It kind of has that little flutter to it. Yeah,
absolutely. That's why ripping wraps too, floating those ripping wraps, they kind of flutter down slower. But Lake of the Woods, yes, I'm with you. I think a 1/2 ounce jig on a mooch minnow or a freeloader or even a mayor, you could catch them just dumping that plastic. And I think, they were in some pretty bitey moods. And so
Yeah.
I don't, I know for a fact this doesn't always correlate, but in my mind, I always think big baits, big fish. And I know that's not right in the summer or the winter because there's times where, I catch great big walleyes on an extremely small spoon or a tiny jigging wrap or something like that. But early season, I do believe you can get away with much bigger baits than you can, midwinter. And so, using a 3 or a 4-inch plastic, like the mooch minnow with a half-ounce head, whether it's a tungsten head or you're fishing even just a half-ounce moon eye or something like that, I think they're going to eat it. I think those fish that we caught the other day, when we caught them, because we were using a pretty big torpedo spoon, they would have lunched any of those items that we just talked about.
Yeah, I agree. But back to it again is efficiency, and I don't think there's a better bait out there other than that tungsten torpedo spoon for that job. I mean, it was to be able to drop a bait down. I mean, most of the fish we caught were suspended without giving too much away. But even to get when they're slowly swimming and you have a second and a half window to get down to that 15 feet, you can't have a little 1/8 ounce spoon, lead spoon that's just floating down there. You got to get it right in front of their mouth. And it was almost like a reaction bite sometimes, like you'd see them on the Markham 2D and you'd drop down. And the second you got within 2 feet of them, they were coming up and boom, all of a sudden you're bit.
Exactly. I think those fish, well, I don't think, I know. I mean, when we were out there, those fish that were up in the water column, they were biters. And it was
Yeah.
exciting to see these fish that were 10 feet below the surface, over 30 feet of water. In the past, you would hardly see those fish, especially if you were zoomed in on the bottom, like so many anglers do. That seeing those fish up high and how aggressive they were and how bitey they were, that you're missing a whole bunch of fish up at Lake of the Woods that are high in the water column. And I think a whole bunch of fish all over the ice belt that are high in the water column that are up there for a reason and they're feeding. And so it's nice to be able to target those fish up high and be able to do it in the manner we did. And we noticed too, like some of the really big marks that weren't sturgeon on the bottom, they weren't as bitey, they weren't as chasey. But as soon as we got some sort of target separation from fish, you knew it was game on. Even if it was 2-3 feet off the bottom, they were eating and they were moving. And so that posed the challenge of getting on top of those fish.
For sure.
I think we should talk a little bit, in addition to, just presentations, let's talk a little bit about anticipation of these fish and anticipating them with forward-facing sonar, and then also touch back on determining when you should sharpshoot and when you should set up. For me, I'll start with me, Rem, and then I'll let you talk and give your point of view. But for me, with forward-facing sonar, if I see fish out there, and this goes for walleyes, crappies, bluegills, whatever you're chasing. Let's say you see them out at 50 feet. Have your buddy or your co-angler or whoever walk out in front of those fish. First of all, if they don't spook when you're walking, good. That means they're hanging tight. Now, if you drill a hole and they still don't spook, it's time to sharpshoot, right? It is time to sharpshoot. However, you get out there, you start walking, you're already banging them and you're already spooking them. Now, sharpshooting's not going to work today. Let's just set up in an area in which on the forward-facing sonar, you're seeing tons of fish. That's kind of how I go about using forward-facing sonar. That's how I kind of go about using the sharpshooting technique now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so many times that day, like we'd just we'd cut a hole every, 50 yards or so, 150 feet, something like that. And even if we would see just life on the bottom, how many times did we say, oh, there's some life over there? You got to get into an area where there's a lot of life. So we would head that direction and then kind of start maybe not going 150 feet or 150 yards anymore, maybe going 50 yards, and then we would set up or cut another hole, drop the forward facing down and give it a spin. All right, we're kind of running out of life. Maybe we should just kind of stay in that line and then go northeast, whatever direction, but you got to get into an area where there's life. And then usually if we cut enough holes in that area where we were seeing life, we would find the right fish to target.
Yeah, don't settle on areas where, let's say you shine all the way 360 and you only see one or two fish in an area, or maybe none. Maybe they're closer to the bottom. You don't see what you want to see. Continue moving. And we did that a
Yeah.
lot. I think in this episode, I don't know if it'll capture it, but we walked a lot that day. I mean, we put
Yeah.
on, if you were counting steps, we would have been, way up there on your Apple Watch as far as steps are concerned. Cause we went, a quarter or half mile one direction walking, and then we'd circle back around. We had machines, to kind of pick up our gear, or, I know Scott had his trackers out there, so we kind of threw our camera gear in there. We would zip back around to the areas that were more productive and then start there once again. Cause there was a time frame where we were really on them, and then we kind of started drilling
Big
past
low.
them. Yeah, well, we thought they were heading that direction, and then we
Yep.
hit this like mega hole where they were nothing. And it, but that's part of scouting, and you're going to get that when you're in a basin situation. Even on structure where you sort of run out of fish and you need to go back and revisit those areas that were productive for you. And if you hit those areas that were productive and all of a sudden those slow down, now it's time to pick up and hit a new area. Obviously,
Yep.
we're still sort of in early ice time frame. It's not late ice where, we can rip up to Garden Island or the Northwest Angle. We weren't comfortable doing that quite at that situation, but there's a million acres of water to fish on Lake of the Woods. We could have continued out further until we bumped into other schools, or do it like I do at Lake of the Woods a lot, or I'm sorry, Lake Winnipeg a lot. And that's set up in an area, scan around. If you're not seeing them, pick up and move a quarter mile, scan around, pick up and move a quarter mile, varying your depths a little bit, seeing what depths are working the best, and then making a decision based on your maps and based on what you're seeing to determine where you're going to be fishing. And that's huge. That, to me, that's scouting in a nutshell. And that's where forward facing sonar is so powerful. You can, even with the unit we were using was a 34, Garmin 34. Even with that 34, we could see those fish out at 130 feet. So maximize your feet out and then just scan in 360 degrees. If you're not seeing them, get out and move past that 130 foot mark, start scanning again until you find what you want to see and where you want to set up.
And two, I mean, how many times did the on top of the ice structure, it's been talked about so much in the last few years since forward facing, or even before that, Red Lake, you always fish by a pressure ridge or the dirty ice, and that was kind of how we started our area on this episode. Is we got into an area, cut a hole, and then we started walking, and it's like, oh man, we kind of have an intersection here of little cracks and dirty ice, and boom, there were the fish. So just look for little things like that too, to on a place like Lake of the Woods where you said there's 1.2 or whatever million acres. You kind of got to have little keys, and those are always good places to start.
Yeah, points of interest, whether it's shelf ice, a heave, like you said, dirty, milky ice. It could be bottom structure, bottom contour. Something changes on the substrate on the bottom, whether it goes like transition lines, let's say on, you're going to rock to mud or something that's holding bait fish in area. If I get into an area and I'm seeing lots of bait fish up high, I'm going to concentrate on those areas because I know those big walleyes aren't far. They love chasing those big schools of bait fish, and those are all good starting points. Rem, let's take a quick break here. We're going to pause, and when we come back, let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk a little bit more about fishing reports in your neck of the woods. We'll talk about the fishing that I've been doing. We'll get a little bit away from the sharpshooting talk. I want people to watch this episode of Dialed In Angling. They're going to get a really good idea and a really good lesson in sharpshooting walleyes there. So let's shelf that talk for now. I know ultimately it's going to come back to it because both you and I are excited about this topic. But let's get into the fishing reports. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we got more Dialed In Angling coming your way. OnX Fish is the best tool I have ever used for finding new lakes to target. Quickly filter lakes by species, then select trophy potential, high abundance, keeper potential, or high stocking effort to find the fish you're after in the size and the numbers you are trying to catch. Download from the App Store today to get research tools for the serious anglers and beginners alike, giving you the data to target the right lakes and the confidence to get there. Use tools like recent imagery, fishing hotspot data, or the best-in-class weather features that call out current wind, weather, barometer, moon phase, majors and minors, along with precip and more. onX Fish is a phenomenal tool both on and off the water for discovering new fishing opportunities, many of which you'd never known existed. Download onX Fish Midwest today, the app that is changing the game on ice and open water.
Runnings Home, Farm, and Outdoor stores are celebrating 78 years, serving 90 local communities across the Upper Midwest, the Northeast, and America's Heartland. Runnings has everything you and your family need for your home, on the farm, and in the outdoors. Lawn and garden, hardware, farm and ranch supplies, sporting goods, housewares, snacks, and everything for your pets. Go to runnings.com to find one of the 90 locations near you, or shop online anytime at runnings.com. Runnings, your home, farm, and outdoor store.
There is nothing quite like Minnesota winter. Whether you want to try ice fishing, ice skating, or ice boating, make sure you know the risks and how to play safe on the ice. Measure ice thickness frequently and never go out alone. Always wear a life jacket or float coat and have ice picks readily accessible in case you fall through. Playing on the ice can be fun, but it's never 100% safe. Learn how you can play safe before you go out. Safety is always in season. A message from the Minnesota DNR.
Okay, welcome back to Dialed In Angling. Hey, Dialed In Angling fans, Christmas season is upon us, the holiday gift buying season. If you're looking for a last-minute gift idea, look no further. fishusa.com. They got great gift cards. If you got an angler in mind that is looking for one-stop shopping when it comes to great angling items and the best angling items on the planet, check out fishusa.com. Don't forget their gift card option. It's a great gift idea for the angler in mind. All right, Rem, let's get away from sharpshooting a little bit, even though you and I could probably talk about it all day long. It's super exciting, super fun. It's super exciting, super fun. I know my conversations with our buddy Nick Sakella, Mitch Hackemiller, we've been talking about this ever since we shot this episode. We've been talking about sharpshooting, and it truly is a fun experience on ice. I hope people watch this episode. They're going to gather a lot of how we go about doing it. And you know what? Other people are going to fine tune their own approach to it. But let's get into some fishing reports, because I know since you and I left Lake of the Woods here, we hit the ground running. We hit the ice running. We were fishing after we filmed the crappie episode up in Grand Rapids together. I know you and I chatted a little bit about doing some pan fishing. I've had an opportunity to be out on Mille Lacs a few different days. I fished a few different panfish lakes. I know you've been up on Red Lake. Let's start with you. I want to hear the Red Lake fishing report. And of course, our Dialed In Angling podcast listeners, after this segment, we're going to have a full fishing report from all over the ice belt, so stay tuned for that. But Rem, let's jump into your Red Lake report, because on our way up to Lake of the Woods, we were hearing about how phenomenal Red Lake was. And I got an opportunity to fish there just briefly. I did an afternoon trip out there. It was absolutely phenomenal. Caught some walleyes. But I know you went all day, and you went shortly after we were done at Lake of the Woods, and you absolutely pounded them.
Yeah, it was silly. I mean, what Red Lake is known for, get out, shallow water, hungry walleyes. I got a little bit spoiled. My uncle owns a couple skid houses, so didn't have to go out and brave the elements like we have been doing. But yeah, he was on them, and he gave me a call, and I take zero credit for this bite, but we went up, and it was silly. I mean, I've had the same tungsten roach spoon tied on, and I don't know how many I would swing and a miss on, and I knew I could watch it on the forward facing that my minnow head fell off in middle of the hook set and dropped back down, and they were so aggressive and so hungry. I caught them with no bait, which it was fun. I mean, it's what you go to Red for. I know some people kind of oh, you're going to Red, whatever. But it's if you want to go and put a pile of fish on the ice and that's another great place to get confidence and stuff. That was the first place I caught walleyes on Rip and Wraps. I don't know how many years ago. And it was just kind of like, man, do these things actually work? I think I don't even know if I could drive yet. So, little money I had, I'd go into the tackle store and buy whatever new stuff was out. And yeah, now pretty much always have a Rip and Wrap tied on. And maybe I should have been using it this last trip up there because they were crushing those torpedo spoons with no bait. But it's just so much fun. We did catch a handful on the dead stick rods, but it was a jig fisherman's paradise, really. I mean, you'd mark them and they were acting like the suspended walleyes on Lake of the Woods. Go straight vertical and almost knock slack in your line.
Well, I'm with you. Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, Red Lake is always one of my first ice destinations. It is for a lot of people for good reason. You look at every YouTuber on the planet that films ice content. They're up there as quick as they can on Red Lake because the fishing's really good. You catch a ton of fish. It's a ton of fun. Look at like when we were up there, we saw a bunch of my customers that, it's like old home week. Like you bump into so many people that from the fishing world because they all flock their early ice for good reason. The fishing's
it's kind
great.
Of tradition too. Sorry to cut in on you, but it's kind of a tradition. At least for me, we've had that cabin there since 2000. So we're always up there early ice, and like you said, you meet the same people over and over. Meet old friends, new friends when you go have your annual fish fry, and yeah, it's somewhere kind of you got to open up the year on. At least get up there for, like you said, an afternoon. Thankfully, I was up there for 2 days, but it's just so much fun.
So from what I'm gathering from other anglers and just social media and me being up there, you being up there, the bite is still on fire. It seems like they're firing. What's cool about Red Lake is like last year, when Nick and I filmed Dialed and Angling on Red Lake Early Ice, I got a 28-inch walleye, man. We got a big pike. I'm seeing more and more bigger fish. Last year, I was getting reports, and my buddies were on the south end. We were actually filming on the north end last year, but my buddies were on the south end, and they had caught a 27-incher. I had heard multiple reports when we went into the bar restaurant at night where guys were getting 25s, 26s. This year, I'm seeing a ton of fish that are in that 20 to 24-inch range. That's sort of outside the norm because, over the last 10 years, Red Lake's been a great destination for numbers, but you haven't seen a lot of those big fish. And I'm seeing a lot of those big fish come online, and it's great to see. I always say in every podcast and every time you talk to me, I like to see all of our fisheries succeed because that just means more angling opportunities for anglers. And to see Red Lake really just fire right now, it's awesome.
Yeah, maybe was it last year or 2 years ago? There was like 4 30-inchers caught out of red, which I didn't even know that was a thing, to be honest with you. But I want to say it was last year.
It was.
I mean, when you think about it, how many tens of thousands of walleyes get caught out of there, and you've heard of 4, but still, I mean, a 30-incher is a 30-incher, and then go up there, catch a pile and that's the nice thing about red is they're all quality. You're not catching I love Lake of the Woods, but you're not catching your Lake of the Woods 10 to 12-inch saugers. If you get a bite, it's pretty rare it's under 14 inches. And most of the time, I know we struggled. We kept some fish for a fish fry, and we struggled getting our unders, under that 17-inch mark, which I don't need to eat fish. As long as I can set the hook into healthy quality fish, I'm all for it.
So Rem, another destination that is just red hot right now is Lake of the Woods. We experienced it when we were doing a sharpshooting episode, but we saw other anglers that were absolutely crushing them up there. All the resorts, the guides, they're reporting just incredible numbers of fish. I know some people from my hometown were up there. They absolutely pounded them. Lake of the Woods is one of those destinations that you need to go to from now until New Year's for sure to get on that, what I would consider early ice bite, because it's red hot. Rem, what do you think? What would be your advice for people if they're heading up to Lake of the Woods?
Yeah, I would get up there with a a tackle box full of tungsten torpedo spoons. I mean, even without forward facing, whatever, it's so nice to have something that shows up so well on 2D, forward facing, whatever it might be. It just shows up so good. Get out in that 21 to 24 feet of water and, yeah, set up. I've been seeing the same stuff you've been seeing. I haven't really talked to anybody who's been up there, but following everybody on the resort pages and stuff. I seen that one guy was doing a Facebook Live, and it was like, I don't even know if it was 10 a.m. and he was just in a house by himself, and he's like, "Yeah, this is number 47," and I'm like, "What the heck? That's insane," But yeah, definitely you got to get up there. It's so fun whether you go do it yourself or hop in with a resort. We were talking about it. That whole area is just built on this ice fishing season, and it's cool to see it come to life.
Yeah, sharpshooting side or even forward-facing sonar side. If you don't have a ton of ice fishing gear, you don't even need a graph up at Lake of the Woods right now. You could call one of the resorts, rent a hard house. They'll haul you out. They'll set you up in the house. You bring your dead stick rods. You bring a spoon rod. You bring a few kids with you. You're going to have a great time up there. There's a ton of resorts on that South Shore, from Arneson's Rocky Point all the way over through Adrian's. I mean, there's a ton of options for different resorts that are down there. And, if one's booked, the next one should be open. I know there's some availability. They book up fast, but I'm telling you, if you're looking for a great experience for kids, just fish catching for walleyes, that is pretty much hard to beat.
I would agree.
In addition to Lake of the Woods, in addition to Red Lake, I have been out on Mille Lacs Lake a lot, and I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but Mille Lacs Lake is really good fishing. I had a envision in my head, this summer, the fishing was okay. I did well with customers. We got plenty of keeper fish when we were able to keep them. We were able to put numbers in the boat, but the fish were a little bit finicky. We had a warmer fall, and they were still kind of in their summer patterns, even when I got off of Mille Lacs Lake. And so I wasn't sure how this winter season was going to be. I know late fall was really good. A bunch of my buddies that were out there did really well pounding walleyes, but you never know if that's going to carry over, because if you've caught a fish on Mille Lacs lately, if you've caught a walleye on Mille Lacs Lake over the course of the summer, you realize how fat they are. They're absolutely enormous. They don't look like the typical skinny Mille Lacs walleyes. There's tons of forage in the lake. And so I just wasn't sure if it was going to be like last winter. Last winter, the walleye bite was good right when we got out there, but then tanked immediately. And it was really tough to get on fish. Yes, you got your peak feeding periods, your bite windows where you got a few walleyes. If it weren't for the perch last year, Mille Lacs would have been extremely tough fishing. Fast forward to this year, getting out there with my friends, poking around. Mille Lacs is one of those big lakes where it takes you a long time to get to different locations a lot of times. So I did a lot more scouting on the front end of it, but I spent a day of just looking and going over gravel bars, hitting rock piles, eventually getting out to mud flats and finding really consistent, good ice. And right now, even this week, I'm seeing 10 to 12, even 14 inches ice. They're seeing even more ice than that down in the bays. Most resorts are open for business. You can drive ATVs, snowmobiles, although we lost most of our snow. So I'm recommending ATVs, maybe UTVs, stay on the stake paths. There are some heaves that have developed with this wind, just like all of these destinations, but the fishing has been really good. This year class that we're seeing, that's 2 years old now, or a year and a half old, whatever you call them. They're phenomenal. They're absolutely everywhere. I know for a fact, the other day when we were out, we got over 150 walleyes on the lake. This is no joke for two guys. 150 walleyes. The majority of them were 9 to 11 inches. Some are 12. But then I would say we got probably 20 of them that were over 12 inches. So a lot. We got a ton that were 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 24s. We got some nicer fish as well. So you're seeing several different year classes. Obviously, the bulk of the catch we caught were those smaller ones. But you want to talk about a lake that is like just on the cusp of being one of the premier ice or premier walleye destinations once again. I mean, all of the bad press that Mille Lacs has had over the last 10 years, I think will be solved with this year class, because I have never seen a year class like this where you can go absolutely anywhere and catch fish like I have on Mille Lacs, other than maybe Lake of the Woods with that year class we're seeing. It's absolutely stunning.
And the lake needs it. Like you said, they've been almost penalized, not penalized, but like, so it's been getting so much hate or shade the last, I don't know, 10 years. And the lake needs it. Resorts need it. And, everybody around there is, I'm sure, just as excited as you to be able to go out, super close to home and catch a bunch of nice fish.
It's great. So we have good bait fish, right? We have decent numbers of walleyes biting, at least for now. I mean, it's early ice. It's too early to tell. I mean, the bite could tank, you get a couple more cold fronts and things could turn off, but that could happen anywhere. But seeing these numbers of fish, whether they're biting or not, is super cool to see. And then you add the perch in the mix. There's two different major year classes of perch. There's what I would consider the jumbos right now, and a lot of those are 10 to 12 inchers. And then there's this other class of year class of perch that are like 6 to 9 inchers, and they're absolutely everywhere. And then on top of it, there's a ton of tulibies, a bunch of small tulibies. The lake is healthy. Those small walleyes were all spitting up bloodworms, all sorts of different invertebrates. The cool part about Mille Lacs is it's really, really fertile when it comes to small insects. So as we progress throughout the winter, those fish should have tons to eat, even though there's not a ton of young of the year perch in the lake right now. And I think that's why they're biting. The biologists will tell you that's why those little ones are biting right now. But as we progress throughout the winter and we get more and more bug hatches, those smaller fish are going to move out to those deeper water areas, and they're going to be feeding on invertebrates, and they're going to be well fed, and that will carry them into spring. And it's great to see. You can go absolutely anywhere and shine a forward-facing sonar around right now and see walleyes. You see little ones, you see big ones. Definitely the bigger walleyes were biting more around those bite windows and those peak feeding periods. We had this crazy bite window the other day that was like from 9 to 11, and I didn't pay attention to any majors or minors, but there had to be a major between 9 and 11 because it was absolutely bonkers. We were catching fish like crazy. The morning bite wasn't that great. And then all of a sudden, 9 o'clock in, it was like bang, 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 bang. We were catching them nonstop. And then they sort of shut off. The afternoon bite wasn't phenomenal. We had this sort of crazy, grand finale, we were calling it, of small ones where it was like bang, bang, bang. I know I caught 20 or 30 small ones in one hole and we were all catching them. But we never had a fire bite with big fish after that. So that tells me that, throughout the winter, you're really going to have to cling to some of these bite windows to get good numbers of those bigger fish in Mille Lacs, which is fine. They're super healthy. I anticipate once the ice gets thicker that that bite's going to slow down. And then what I do as a guide is I try to key in on bite windows. I try to key in on peak feeding periods for the walleyes, and then I go chase perch all day, and it makes for a really fun day on the ice.
And a quick day. As a guide, you don't realize how fast a day gets away from you, and then all of a sudden it's like, holy crap, it's 3 o'clock, we gotta go set up for walleyes. It's like we just got out here. When you're bending the rod on perch all day, it's fun, and it goes really quick.
It does, and if you're keeping fish, it's great. You got a mix of walleyes and perch to bring home. Finally, on Mille Lacs, you can keep 3 fish, plus you can keep some perch. And just with that possibility, I mean, if someone's looking to catch fish to bring home, that's a great opportunity, especially for a day trip from people from the Twin Cities. If they want to drive up for the day, no better place than Mille Lacs, where you can get a good day bite for walleyes and perch and have the potential of keeping a few fish. Not that that's everyone's goal, but certainly there. And a lot of people in the winter, they want to harvest a few walleyes. They want to come home, have a fish fry for the Vikings game on Sunday. Maybe they rip up on a Saturday, and they're going to be able to experience that on Mille Lacs. It's great to see. I'm so happy that Mille Lacs is bouncing back the way it is. It's just fun. And, it's obviously not as big as Lake of the Woods, but you have 133,000 acres where you can kind of spread your wings and stretch out a little bit and get away from the crowds. That's what I've always loved about fishing Mille Lacs, that there's not that many destinations that you can go and have a daytime bite and get away from the crowds. It just doesn't happen. Even on Red Lake, as big as the area in which the anglers can fish, you can kind of get packed in there sometimes, and it can be a little bit featureless in the sense where, you don't know where to go. Whereas Mille Lacs, there's so much structure. And I will say one thing for anglers right now, it's fine if you want to race out to the mud flats or the gravel bars, but there's a good shoreline bite going on right now, and they're catching them during the day. So if you can set up where you're quiet and you don't have a lot of traffic and you get out there in the morning, you start shining around and seeing good numbers of walleyes, don't be afraid to sit there all day. You can hunker down and catch fish right now. I would limit movements. The ice trolling that I love doing or the sharpshooting that we've been talking about, I would really just hunker down on Mille Lacs, flip the otter over, get the heat going, and start catching fish. And don't worry about moving. Kind of take the Red Lake approach sometimes where you just hunker into areas where there's good numbers of fish. Let them come to you. They're moving right now, and you're going to put more fish on the ice. All right, Rem, let's wrap this baby up. We've given some good fishing reports. We've heard about where you've been. Have you been out pan fishing, or do you have plans of getting on Leech Lake? I know you guide in the Walker area. You guide all winter, all summer. Elite Angling Adventures. I know you're getting geared up and getting ready to start taking customers out. Where are you planning on heading this week? Where have you been? I know it's going to get cold again, but it's going to start warming up again next week. What's your plan for the week of Christmas?
The week of Christmas, I am very busy with Christmases. But I plan on being on Leech early next week, scouting for some trips, kind of get my bearings straight. I'll be completely honest, I haven't even been out there yet. Mainly because I know what's coming down the pipe, and that is me living on Leech Lake. Like I said, it's fun to get up to Red Lake of the Woods when we filmed the crappie bite up by Grand Rapids. I try and do as much of that as I can before Christmas, because then it's kind of over for me until late ice. But I will be out on Leech next week, looking for some perch and some walleyes right before dark and stuff like that. But up until now, I have been chasing a few crappies around on some smaller lakes. Pretty small lakes, like less than 500 acres. Which is always fun. And they are it's varying so much right now, lake to lake. Some lakes have fish on weed edges still, the deeper weed edges, the 14 to 18 feet. And then some of them will be smack dab in the middle of the 30-foot basin. And that's kind of another fun part about about early ice, is just finding every lake is different this time of year, where come middle of January, not saying you can't go catch crappies on a weed edge, but they are 99% of lakes, I will say, they'll be out in a basin somewhere. So it's kind of challenging and more rewarding when you do get on them, is finding how each lake is setting up right now. And this weekend I have Christmas up north of Cass Lake, and my folks live on a lake, and it's kind of our tradition is bring the family out and go catch a bunch of crappies and nice bluegills out there. That's kind of what I got going.
Awesome, man. I love it. I love holiday traditions of mixing in either fishing or hunting. On Thanksgiving, I always do like a pheasant hunt, but if there's ice fishing, we try to get out ice fishing as a family. I know right now at the holiday season around Christmas, my nephews are going to be coming. My son, we're already talking about what sort of fishing outings we're going to be doing, what sort of ice fishing opportunities there are. I love it. I think holiday traditions should be steeped in fishing traditions as well. And if you can work in fishing or hunting to your holiday schedule, it makes it even better. That's why I love ice fishing. That's why I love this time of year. The fish are biting everywhere, as you heard. You're going to want to stay tuned. We've got some great fishing reports from a lot of great contributors on Dialed In Angling. So let's take a quick break, and then we're going to cut to the fishing reports, and we'll wrap this up completely. Rem, I can't believe this hour has gone so fast. Appreciate you tuning in. We got Dialed In Angling coming after this. The cold months are rolling in, but that doesn't mean the adventure slows down. There's only one way to make the most of winter, with the 2026 Ski-Doo lineup. Whether you're heading deep into your favorite fishing spots or carving your own path off the grid, Ski-Doo is built to take you there. And there's a reason Ski-Doo has been the best-selling snowmobile brand for more than 2 decades. Proven, reliable, world-class performance. Winter moves fast, If you want it, get it.
It's that time of year again, anglers. Winter is here, and L&M Fleet Supply is ready to make this your best season ever. Head into your favorite L&M Fleet Supply location across northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, or Michigan's UP, and browse the extensive collection of DeWalt tools and accessories, all guaranteed tough. Cut through the thickest ice with DeWalt's 20-volt drill. Brighten your setup with the assortment of 20-volt portable LED lights. And stay entertained with the DeWalt Bluetooth 20-volt speaker. It's weather-resistant, rugged, and ready for any adventure. Check out DeWalt's guaranteed tough deals and more at L&M Fleet Supply. Together, they're the perfect match for all your ice fishing needs.
What's going on, guys? Brandon Olson here with Lockjaw Guide Service with an Otter Tail County fishing report. Ice conditions right now are awesome. We are seeing 9 to 11 inches of ice. Very minimal flooding with the rain and stuff we just got. We did lose all of our snow, so banking a house might be a little bit of an issue. But 9 to 11 inches of good hard ice. We are not seeing much as far as heaves go. The few cracks we had seem to have healed up with that nasty little cold blast we got. So ice conditions wise, we're looking really well. Fishing report wise, the panfish bite, we're just starting to see a few fish show up in the basin. Those fish are going crazy. If you can find them, it is lights out. Walleye wise, kind of the normal stuff, 8 to 15 foot on inside in the weeds or on the outside edge of those weeds. Those have been my favorite places. A dead stick, and you have to be jigging this time of year. Be aggressive, you'll catch more fish. That's what we got. If you want to come to the Otter Tail Lakes area and fish with us, give us a call at 218-640-0158.
Trig Roach with TR Guide Service here in the beautiful Brainerd Lakes area in Minnesota. The ice is looking good. We got between 6 to 9 inches of ice. Still using ATVs and UTVs to travel on those lakes. We got hit with about 8 inches of snow last week, so there's a little bit of slush on the lakes. But the last couple of days it was warm, had some rain, so we lost a lot of that insulation value. And the next week or two is looking cold, so we should be able to get those rental houses out, build some more ice, and go chase after some Brainerd Lakes gold. It's Trig Roach. We'll see you in the next one.
Hey guys, Tony Roach here. I'll be giving your fishing report for Mille Lacs this week. As you heard on the podcast, the Mille Lacs fishing's been excellent. But just to reiterate that, a lot of the resorts are allowing ATV, even UTV traffic or snowmobile. But with all the warm up and the rain we've had, it's really knocked the snow down a lot. So you might want to travel, if you are traveling with some sort of machine, bring up an ATV. That's probably your best bet for getting around and stay on those stake paths. With the wind we've had, there's a lot of cracks and heaves forming. And of course, go out of a resort. They're going to help you get in and out safely. But guess what? Like I said in the podcast, the walleyes are biting. We're catching good numbers of all sorts of size fish. Hey, and don't be afraid to get set up shallow. Limit your movements, limit the noise, and you're going to put a lot of walleyes on the ice. And guess what? The perch are biting as well.
Hey, this is Alex Redzlock from Devil's Lake, North Dakota with Perch Shoal Guide Service. Give me a quick little ice update here from Devil's Lake. We're sitting anywhere from about on the east side of the lake. There's still some spots around that 4-inch mark, but most of our ice is sitting anywhere from 6 to 13 inches ice, kind of depending on where you go. The farther west you go in the Devil's Lake Basin, you're going to run into more and more ice. For fishing wise, walleyes have been pretty decent. I mean, up and down with these weather fronts coming through, it's been a little goofy. We're just starting to kind of roll out into those deeper spots where the perch have been hiding out. So we haven't really gotten into a whole lot of that yet. So keep posted for more updates here from Devil's Lake.
If you've been waiting for the green light, here it is. Lake of the Woods is on fire. Our ice conditions are continuing to build across the South Shore. Our travel is improving every day, and the bite is insanely rolling. As far as travel, no resorts are allowing vehicles out, half-ton, stuff like that yet, but check in with the resorts and the local bait shops as conditions are changing every day. The walleyes and saugers are stacking up in that 22 to 32-foot range with hot low light action in the mornings and the evenings, and we even have a good daytime bite starting up. The glow torpedo spoons are insanely good. Dead sticks are also getting crushed, and the aggressive fish are responding to that new Rapala Nano Wrap in gold. Give that a try. It's amazing. We have light snow on the ice and some bare spots, quite a bit of bare spots on the ice. We've had some solid cold temps, and the expanding resort access means great conditions to get after it right now. We have a big windstorm coming in with the winter storm warning going in for the next couple of days. So make sure before you head up our way, you check in, give us a call at the resorts or at Outdoors Again. They'll be able to tell you what's going on. So early ice, hungry fish, big lake action. We have it here in Lake of the Woods, and it's delivering, and the season is just getting started. Good luck.
All right, Rem, it's a wrap. We want everybody to tune in to the sharpshooting segment on Dialed In Angling. It drops this week. You can check it out. It'll be on Saturday mornings. If you can't tune in Saturday mornings, DVR it or tune in to our YouTube channel. We want you to like and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in each and every week, not only to the show, but to the podcast as well. Hopefully we got you tuned in on sharpshooting. If you watch the segment, we'll get you dialed in on sharpshooting. Rem, thanks a lot for being on the show. Good luck fishing to everybody. Happy holidays to everybody. Merry Christmas. Thanks for tuning in. Until next week, I'm Tony Roach, and this has been the Dialed In Angling Podcast.